I firmly believe there are certain videos on our channels with so much value within a minute and a half that you watch that video, you can get more nuggets and actually more actionable and applicable wisdom to your business, or if you kind of align with that career or industry that that person is in, that you may get in some hour and a half long podcast with experts.
Welcome back to the Kris Krohn Show. I've got James Dumoulin here, a young 22-year-old who is the founder of the School of Hard Knocks. Just did an interview with him last month, got 1 million views, just like that. Getting 1 billion views a year, he clearly has figured something out. James, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Super happy to be here today, man.
Bro, do you just like go up to people that are like in nice cars and nice houses and try to just flip on the interview and just say, whoa, what do you do for a living? Like, you're kind of that guy a little bit, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's completely organic. I'd say like 90% of our content is very organic, but we'll literally just find the right places and the right cities, right proximities, everything. So you got to get to places like River Oaks in Houston, Texas, or Highland Park in Dallas, or Ball Harbor in Miami, Beverly Hills, Los Angeles. And you go find the right people, you know, maybe they're in a vehicle, maybe they're in a mansion. We'll kind of go up and go get some game from them.
So you started doing this a few years ago. You were technically a teenager, and that had to be a little brazen to go out there and just start approaching successful people. What gave you the nerve and the gumption in the first place to even try such a thing?
You know, with anything in sales, it's funny because a lot of the reason why people suck at sales is because they hear the word no and they kind of get a little disgruntled or terrified of going out there and selling. In our case, it was going up to just have conversations with random people, whereas I always viewed it as, hey, every no is a step closer to that yes, to that person who is going to be willing to give some game. And what you realize is that the most successful people, some of the wealthiest people in the world, they are very willing to give back. So it starts out back in 2019. I had immense success on TikTok, started out in 2021. 2 years prior, I had immense success on TikTok. I saw the value in the creator economy. At the time, it was a $500 billion industry, but it was exploding. So myself and my 2 partners, my brother and my great friend Josh, we were all from the DC area. We're all like, hey, we're very like-minded. Let's start a channel together in regards to business, because there's a big lack of finance content, right? I think the #1 business TV show is Shark Tank, and they only do like 1 million views a week on TV, which honestly isn't that much compared to the kind of reach that you can get doing short form content and creating a channel about that. So we started out just the 3 of us in 2021. Our first couple months, just us making content about business. Realized, hey, most people don't give a shit about 3 young 20-year-old kids talking business. We could really scale this thing up so much faster if we went to go seek out industry experts that had 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years of industry experience in different industries. So we literally just started out in Austin, Texas. We'd go downtown to the tech district, the finance district, and just start having conversations with people. And one thing led to another. Viral content led to another piece of viral content, and it ended up leading to us being able to interview people like Mark Cuban, the president of Nike, the CEO of Frito-Lay, CEO of 7-Eleven, some of the biggest Fortune 500 CEOs and founders of multi-billion-dollar companies we were able to interview and get some advice from.
Wow, so you figured out a lot, and you found something very interesting, that a lot of the successful people, they're a unique breed of people. They're actually often very generous. They do like to give back. And I think I've personally experienced it to some extent, that when you become hyper successful, it's like there's a lot of other people that will actually look at you and feel like you're unapproachable. And it actually isn't a good feeling. And yet there is a desire to actually create value and to give back. And so somehow you must have gotten that from your upbringing. Like, when you look back at just your childhood, what gave you the confidence to just start approaching people like that?
I would just add on to that before I kind of go into that, is that I would argue that oftentimes broke people are the most bitter people and kind of selfless type of people. What I found from interviewing so many A players and successful people is that they realize that what's, in my opinion, the only shortcut to success that it is in today's world is mentorship. Oftentimes they had somebody that reached out and helped them, or gave them advice or expertise or mentorship that helped them get to where they were in their careers. So with them having that in mind, they realized that, hey, even if I just give this person 5, 10 minutes or 20 minutes, or even go beyond that, do a podcast, whatever it may be, that's kind of a way for them to give back. And that's why we've had a lot of success interviewing a lot of people. But I think everybody can apply this to their everyday lives, because a lot of people think that, oh, this person has a 9-figure business, an 8-figure business. Surely they wouldn't want to talk to me. Surely they wouldn't want to answer my question. But I would very much disagree. I'm not saying all hyper successful people are
Sure.
willing, right? Because they understand that time is money and time is very valuable, right? It's our greatest asset. But a lot of times people are very willing to help out with that. And so just to kind of give some context as far as my upbringing goes, is I had the privilege of living in South Korea from the ages of 6 to 10. And when I lived over there, my father, he was a West Pointer, had an incredible career in the military. He ran the largest overseas military base in the entire world. So from 6 to 10, I was watching him give speeches in front of tens of thousands of people. And I was really seeing the discipline he had, the leadership capabilities that he had, being in rooms with secretaries of state, secretary of defenses, and meeting all these leaders from foreign countries, top generals, all these incredible people. And seeing that from an early age was really helpful in my perspective. I didn't come from an abundance of money, right? If you know anything about the military, it's like, you can be comfortable, and as long as you're smart and disciplined, you can still make a great life for yourself. But ultimately, seeing that from an early age gave me the confidence to realize, man, if my dad's able to do this, and you can see one person that kind of do it, and you kind of grow up accustomed to that, then it's like you ultimately, in my opinion, you kind of inhabit that trait.
I live in a beautiful gated neighborhood, and a couple months ago, this couple came up to my house and solicited me, and they're just like, "Hi," and they said, "You don't know us, we don't know who you are, but can we just sit down with you for a minute, and can you tell us how you can afford such a nice house?" And it was I invited them in, I sat them down on my couch, we had the conversation. 45 minutes later, we thanked each other, I let them go, and I just thought to myself, that reminds me of how I was, because I feel like there's a small group of people that keep passing the baton forward. And it's those that are willing to take the risk to get curious and ask for help. Most people, they kind of have this lone wolf syndrome. And so I'm just kind of thinking, man, at your age, you've had a chance to probably interview over 1,000 really successful people. So your head's probably filled with all sorts of value and knowledge. And it's kind of this double whammy where on the one hand, you're passing the knowledge onto the world, but you get to consume it firsthand yourself. And obviously you're having a lot of success with 90 to 120 million views a month on your content. Kind of curious, like what's some of your favorite advice moments that when you heard it, it kind of penetrated deep into your soul and you're like, wow, that's not just for social media. Like I'm keeping that one for me.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mentioned it to you earlier is that I interviewed a multimillionaire out in Orlando, Florida, and I asked him, how can somebody become a millionaire in 2024? And he asked me a question. It wasn't a piece of advice, but he asked me the question, do you know where the most valuable piece of real estate is? And I questioned, where? And he goes, graveyards, because there's billion-dollar ideas sitting in the ground of people that never took action. And that hit me on an entirely different level, because how many times have we heard our great friends or family members say, I'm going to start a business and I'm going to start that podcast and do that. And they never end up doing
so
it.
Your advice that you got was you got to be an action taker.
You got to take action, man.
You got to instead of the world of procrastinators, right?
Right. And it just goes in line with, hey, procrastination is the assassination of all destination. If you're starting tomorrow, forget about it because it's never going to happen. That diet that you say you're going to go on, it just doesn't. So it's like day by day, like little increments of success that compiles, right? That compound effect, right? And ultimately, it's like so. I'm a huge proponent of that. Like A, taking action. B, you got to have a risk tolerance. I think the top 400 people on the Forbes list, they said when they were interviewed that they were willing to go to negative $4 million to be successful. And you, somebody who's a proponent of leveraging debt and kind of going to that space because you know what to do with it, that's a great example. So you got to be risk tolerant and you can't be afraid to kind of like go all in on yourself. So I would say taking action, getting comfortable with taking a lot of risk. And then I would say whenever you do start something, it's like, getting really good at learning how to delegate, use leverage, leveraging people. And remember, everything goes back to people. People will take you places that money can't. I'm a firm believer in that. There's no transaction of person A sending money to this person without going through another person. So I would say just attach yourself to people. And I think that's ultimately how you get to where you want to be.
I was in Tony Robbins' ecosystem years ago, and I'll never forget when he said, you're one person away from lifetimes of income. And I look at this next month, and I think you've got Kevin Hart coming up as an interview. I think you've got, former President Donald Trump coming up as an interview in July. And I'm like, wow, you're meeting the kind of people that can take you places. But the cool part is you're creating value for them. When you came out to my house here in Utah and we shot that little interview, that was 1 million views, on your channel with just one video. And it's like, wow, you created great value for me. If you were to text me or reach out to me and say, hey, like I have an idea or I wanted to get your thought on something, or do you want to collaborate? I'd be like, yeah, I'm open or game for anything, because part of what you did is you created huge value for me. So I'm like, as a 22-year-old, you're kind of getting a chance to get out there and meet a lot of the who's who's.
I mean, and that's the fascinating thing kind of about the channel that we run. It's enabled us to get in meetings with people like Gary Vee and going out to his headquarters and people like Grant Cardone, some of the most renowned, people in the space, as well as not only just like the more celebrity entrepreneur like yourself, even though you built real businesses, right? You've had a lot of success in real estate, but also like being able to develop great relationships. I'm now great friends with James Keys, who ran 7-Eleven for like 7 years, sold the company to a big Japanese oil company. And so we've really been able to curate and develop some amazing relationships. And I could kind of touch on something is because you brought up having that value proposition. And for anybody out there, some of the best networking advice that I would give to anybody is that I love to use this example. Take a guy like Tom Brady. Tom Brady is, without a doubt, I'll call him the greatest football player of all time. Maybe he's one of them, right? But there is something innate, there's something, some core skill set that we've all developed, whether it's me and you or anybody watching this right now, that you've developed that you can actually do better than Tom Brady. And maybe it's playing the piano, or maybe it's playing the guitar, or the piano, or maybe it's playing golf, whatever it may be. It's finding what you can kind of do better or understand more than that person that you want to connect with. If you can take that to them and make it make sense for that person, that is a great way to connect with higher up people. Because successful people realize that, hey, it's one thing to get in the room, but to actually stay in the room with those kind of people, you need to find a way to kind of provide some sort of value. If you're just at the table, not really saying anything, you're kind of giving people that value, it's like, you're just not going to stay there for very long. So I'd say really start to identify either the differences or the weaknesses that you see in other people in which you have those strengths. And if you can provide that to them, then, they'll open up their whatever for you.
John Lee Dumas, he taught me that riches are in the niches. And I remember I said, well, what do you mean by that? And he says, well, okay, I decided that I want to do podcasts, and that didn't make me special. So I decided I want to do business podcasts. Well, that didn't make me special because there's other business podcasts. But you know what they didn't have? They didn't have a business podcast that would release a new podcast every single day. And for like the last 11 or whatever years, he like consecutively has done 3,000 and whatever. He's been dropping an episode every single day on money, finance, and business for like a decade, and he's been completely consistent at it. And he said, there's only one person in the world that's ever done that, and that's me. And I look a little bit about what you're doing. I'm like, okay, so here's the riches in your niches, is that you go out there and find really successful people. And I think your skill set, James, is not that you interview them. It's how you interview them. You know how to interview and edit for creating, I would call it maximum value in a very, very, very short time block, which means that it becomes very entertaining to actually watch because so many gold nuggets are being dropped. It's fascinating. The videos are always kind of like in an interesting background, interesting place, interesting people. But you do a great job extracting information because you're not a generic interviewer. Like on the spot, you're very dynamic in asking follow-up questions so that you can extract. I think our interview was like maybe 15 or 20 minutes. And that was all you needed to get everything that you needed to basically make a video with get 1 million views. So I think that's your unique quality. I'm kind of curious, what do you think your riches and your niches is today? And where do you think it is where you're headed tomorrow?
So I think you brought up a great point. And I think one of the things that really does make us unique and something that I've tried to really stick between when I make our content is that how can we get people more value in a minute and a half worth of content that they may even get in an hour-long podcast? And I know it sounds crazy, but genuinely, I firmly believe there are certain videos on our channels with so much value within a minute and a half that you watch that video, you can get more nuggets and actually more actionable and applicable wisdom to your business, or if you kind of align with that career or industry that that person is in, that you may get in some hour and a half long podcast with experts. So I think that that's a great example of kind of like the riches and the niches. And I think that, with us, it's really trying to curate, the viral content with hyper successful people. And I think, and you just to kind of clarify what you're asking is that kind of like going forward in regards to content or just like the channel on itself.
Yeah, I'm actually interested in both, but like, especially for your business, like you've built something amazing here. The last 3 years, you've got 2 billion views. I think I have that right here. In the last 3 years, 2 billion views on 6 million organic followers. Like, obviously you can go bigger, better, but where are you going next? Where's your future lie?
I love this question and I have a great answer for it. So everybody's familiar with the channel Barstool Sports. Barstool Sports is led by Dave Portnoy, and our goal is to build the Barstool Sports of business content. And I'll tell you why. What Dave Portnoy did with Barstool, everybody thinks that Barstool is a media company, but it's actually a media ownership company. So 95% of the content that Barstool puts out and creates, they don't actually create it. He just found the right people to kind of curate that content, and he got ownership in all that, to the point where Barstool Sports was able to sell to ESPN for like $600 or $700 million. So with us at Hard Knocks, is we built our parent company, the School of Hard Knocks, made it a very favorable brand. We do, as you mentioned, 90 to 120 million views every month. We've got about 6 million followers. Our next phase is to kind of really build out the media property to where we'll have Hard Knocks Real Estate, Hard Knocks Finance, Hard Knocks Sports, where you're talking about the contract and the business side of sports, to where, it'll be a huge empire where you'll have the parent channel and all these other kind of channels that are run by, talent. And so I think that's going to be maybe a harder part, is finding the right people that understand how to curate viral content consistently. And I think that is our next phase, is to try and build out like the Barstool Sports of business content. Because as I mentioned earlier, there really is a lack of actual business content, but I think that there's a need for it. And I think that a lot of people do want it. It's just finding it from like the right people. And I think that we can really fulfill that if we build this thing out.
I think that's kind of been one of the harder challenges for me in the last decade of putting social media content out there, is trying to figure out how to put it in the hands of people who want it, because business and finance, it's kind of a smaller niche, right? I mean, the amount of people out there that want to watch beautiful women and cat videos is pretty high. And so you have to make business kind of entertaining, because let's be honest, it's kind of boring. Like, who wants to bust out spreadsheets and financials? And yet it's also a really critical information piece. I'm in a really tiny niche. I've got a few million followers myself on my channels, but I'm one of the top 5 in the world on real estate, and it's such a small channel, and I'm always looking for ways of getting it out there, bigger. So that's cool. You've got and by the way, I really like the Hard Knocks. I think that's a really sick brand.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, it stems from taking like the life's hardest lessons from people that have, they went bankrupt or they went broke, or just learning tough lessons. Like people, you're an entrepreneur, you've been one for a long time. It's like, there's challenges, man. You have, like Gary Vee said when we interviewed him, he said, entrepreneurship is, it's like eating shit without kind of like getting like a reward for like a long time. So I think that and that's kind of like where it stemmed from, like the School of Hard Knocks is taking the life's hardest lessons, and in particular business from people, and being able to package it up for other people. So
for just a moment, let's talk about your Hard Knocks. Over the last 3 years, what has your biggest struggle been?
Man, I would say I have such a high standard of like content now. And unfortunately, with having the mindset that like I genuinely will not post a video that won't get 500,000 views. I promise you, anybody watching this can go look at our Instagram channel, our last 100 plus, probably even more videos. I haven't counted it, but I can tell you, at least for our last 100 videos, there has not been a single video that we posted that has gotten under 500,000 views. And obviously over time, when you have videos, like we have videos that get 30, 40 million views on them. So that kind of will help out and supplement some of them. But genuinely, so you run out of great content quick. And so it's kind of like, in that mindset, it's like, dude, you got to book that flight, you got to book that flight, you got to book that trip. So that's kind of why it's like, I want this to be sustainable for a long time, but it's also like, man, I've interviewed 1,000 people, and I love what we do. But it's sometimes it's like, man, like it can be a lot having to constantly kind of go book that trip and go get that content. Some trips aren't as successful as others. So I would say my hardest thing would be kind of to maintain that consistency of viral output and viral content.
Makes sense. I think there's challenges in every business. As you look to the future of the media industry, do you think social media, the way you're running it, is it at its infancy, or is it aging out? And is there the next big thing on the horizon? Have people missed the boat?
I don't think people have missed the boat quite yet, no. In fact, I would argue that it's even almost getting started. We're starting to see a real transfer from the more traditional media. People are tired of kind of consuming the news from the more traditional sites like ABC, Fox News, CNN. Their ratings and their viewership is kind of at an all-time low in the last few years because everybody's moving more on to on-demand content, and everybody can kind of have a piece on that on-demand, and what I like to call it, what's known as like the creator economy, where people are finding people in different niches who are making content about various things. And I think that it's only the beginning. I'm sure new platforms will arise, and the quicker that people can kind of get in the mindset of adapting and innovating to those new platforms, the better off people will be. Because like we saw with TikTok. TikTok, came out in early 2019, and obviously it's now the number one search engine. It's the number one search engine in the world. It's used by billions of people across the world, but there was a lot of hesitancy there. And so I think that it's just like, as long as people are willing to be adaptable and get ready for whatever that new platform is, I'm sure something will come out here very soon. I don't know what it is yet, but I would just say for now, it's like, hey, as long as you're posting content consistently, you're on all platforms, you're diversified, I think that there's still room for everybody to grow on there.
You're 22, so you're super young, and yet you've had an extraordinary amount of success. For my entrepreneurs, young and old, that are watching and listening, Bro, where does the energy and the motivation come from to get up and cause this?
Well, I'm a firm believer that nobody is coming to save you, right? Um, I hate to say it, but it's like this, like, especially if you're a man, you don't have a plan B. You can be a pretty girl and you can get that invite on the yacht or get that. And I don't mean that in a sense, but it's like genuinely as a young man, it's like you have to make this happen for yourself. And so from a young age, I've been to over 20 countries. I grew up traveling the world just through my dad being in the military, and I just always had a passion for that. And I realized that the only way that you can actually kind of have that lifestyle of being able to kind of go wherever you want at any point in time and not having to ask somebody for permission for it, to ask somebody for a couple of days off, you have to be the one to make that happen for yourself. And so obviously for us, we found our vehicle was media, was content creation, and we just kind of ran with it. We integrated the business the right way to where now it's like, hey, we went full time, it's doing really well, and it kind of took off. But I mean, honestly, it was just, and having that sacrifice too. Like I was building this entire thing when I was going to school at the University of Texas. So while I was there, I realized that, hey, one of the things I prioritize, I have physical health. I love working out. I think it's extremely important for discipline, and it gives you immense confidence. Obviously, you have to stay afloat in school. I think I had all A's and B's. And then it came down to, well, it's like, okay, you have your social life, you have dating, you have all these other different things that you can balance. But for me, it's like I wanted to build something meaningful to when I knew I was in the timeline. When I got out, no way I was going to work for somebody else or do anything. So I had that sacrifice, and I kind of gave up that partying aspect and that social life, I'd say. Still had a great time, still had really good friends, but you have to kind of have that sacrifice. And just like you said in our interview that we did, I remember asking you, what did you have to sacrifice? And you said that there were some body bags along the way. Not everybody can't go. And so it's just being really mindful of that and the people that you kind of give your time to, especially during that time when you're building and consistently trying to build. You just have to give some things up.
Brother, you look like you're just living your best life right now. You're high on life. You're winning. You're doing really, really well. If people want to follow you, learn more about you, where do they go and do that?
Our channel is the School of Hard Knocks. We are on all platforms. And great stuff coming. We recently launched a community called the School of Mentors, and that's kind of where we're at right now.
Awesome, man. Listen, thank you so much for being on the Kris Krohn Show. Wishing you the very best luck. Keep it up, brother. We'll see you guys next time.